Hello! Today we've got a couple of products from RadioMaster, and I know I've got these a little bit late and people have done these already, but I don't care, I'm going to do them anyway. We've got the 2.4 diversity receiver, and that's probably going to feature in a video on its own when I actually have something to connect it to, but we'll feature it as a guest star of this one, because what I wanted to talk about in this video was this. This is a UART Flasher, essentially, for ELRS. And you can flash Express LRS in a number of ways. You can use Wi-Fi, which is what I normally do. If you've already got it connected to your flight controller, perhaps on a quad, you can flash it via your Betaflight serial port and it passes it through. But there's another way of doing it, and that's purely by connecting a USB to serial device into the receiver. And you can do this even before you connect it. And some people might like doing this because they find their Wi-Fi is a bit flaky, or if they go onto Wi-Fi on the device, then they can't get Wi-Fi to their main router or something like that, perhaps. But the other thing about this is it also works as a flash recovery device. The great thing about Express LRS is you can't brick them. If you were to go ahead and flash the wrong firmware to it, or your firmware flash is interrupted, and then your receiver didn't boot up properly, you can put it in bootloader mode and you can use this to be able to flash it. You can actually do it through Betaflight as well in the same way. You can use that port again, but this is a good standalone tool. You've always been able to do this, but previously you was using this little thing here, an FTDI card, and you'd have to connect this up and then perhaps solder into places on your receiver. The idea of this package is it makes things a lot simpler. So what you get in here is the serial to USB device, wires to connect it, and these little things here, as well as some pogo pins. It's at this point that I realise to show this properly, not only do I need to do close-up, I need to do close-up with my computer, which means I need to film down here, and I haven't got a way of doing that. Give me 2 secs, let me sort this out. While I'm sorting that out, let me talk to you about the sponsor of today's video, which is PCBWay. Of course, PCBWay is great for manufacturing your PCB prototype boards and PCB assembly, and I'd love to make some PCBs, but I'm also pretty clueless about PCB design. But the great news is that PCBWay also does CNC milling, sheet metal fabrication, injection molding, and 3D printing. Now, I've got several 3D printers, which is great for materials like PLA or TPU, but what if I was prototyping models that I wanted to be metal? Amongst the many other materials PCBWay can print with, it can also use SLM printing to produce pieces in aluminium, stainless steel, or titanium, amongst others. So check out the link if you're interested. Right, quick Amazon Prime order has got me this little gooseneck thing, so I've got my phone over here so we can look on the desk, and I can take you through these things in a bit more detail. So as said, we've got the actual USB device, and on this we've got this connector at the end, which has got all the pins labelled. You can see that TX, RX, plus minus. There's also a connector here on the side which uses a slightly different cable. I think this is this cable here. It seems to go specific to some receivers that have that interface on it. Obviously this goes into your USB port. We've got this cable here, and you see it's got these little individual things on it there. Although I've got overhead filming, I can't actually see what I'm doing. Okay, that's in like that. Then we've got 2 options. We can plug these into here, and then these connect to these pogo pins. See the way they do that? This is the little true diversity antenna, and what we could do with these pogo pins, sort of hold them in place like that during the flash, and that would do the job. It's not too bad. I mean, it does require several pairs of hands really, because you've got to put that down, and then you've got to click some things on the mouse and stuff. This is where like a helper could come in handy. What we kind of need is something that can hold those on place, and all we've got really is hands. So that's quite tricky to use if you're like on your own and stuff. That's my only word of warning there. Much better, I think, are these things. These are little genius inventions. I've kind of seen these around before, but I don't know what they're called. I'd like to order them for some other stuff. And what we got here, if we just push that in, we see we get this little claw come out, and that can basically attach to something as it goes back in. And what we do with this is we get these individual things like here, pop those on to each one of these, and then we can obviously make a good connection there. So I'm just going to pop the rest of these on, and then we've got all our little claws ready. And then what we can do is we can take this, and you can hopefully see on here that if I turn this around the correct way, you can see we've got good labels there for RX, TX, 5 volt and ground. So if I take, for example, my RX, which is green, and I'm trying to do this both in my screen, my monitor. The only thing I can't do is look at it directly, but what we're trying to do is just get this on the pad, and then it can be a little bit fiddly where they're just pads. If you've got holes, that's a lot easier. Basically, we're trying to just get that in place like so. Turn it over, make sure it's connected there. And that looks good. And what we just need to do is carry on connecting those without them falling off. Well, I had a couple of goes at attaching these on these flat pins, but I just can't make it happen. I get it on okay, and then it will sort of sit there alright, and then eventually it will just sort of ping off. So I think this one I'm going to use the pogo pins to do something with. But before I do that, because you should be able to use these on any receiver, I've also got this receiver which has got holes, which makes things a lot easier. Then connected, it looks like that. So we've got the little things connected into the holes. That's connected to this. We then plug this in via USB. We should see the light come on and it starts to flash. This is just normal operation. This is essentially the same as me hooking it up to something on a flight controller. And so it's just going to try and wait for the radio signal and see if it gets a bind. What I'm going to do is go into Wi-Fi mode just to double check what I've got on there. And obviously we could even flash it via Wi-Fi mode, because at the moment this is working absolutely fine, so it should just work essentially. Okay, you'll see now that it's rapidly flashing, so it's got into Wi-Fi mode, so I should be able to see what this is if I can quickly connect this to my Wi-Fi. Okay, finally loaded in there. It tells us it's a Beta FPV 900 MHz RX flashed with the EU868. Doesn't actually give us the version there, although we've got the merge number. So I want to flash this to the latest version, and I could just go ahead and flash it Wi-Fi as that's already connected, but of course I want to be able to use the UART function, so I'm going to select UART on this. We've got 332 selected, which is the latest one. Now as it is, I need to put this in bootloader mode, so what I need to do for this is just unplug that. There is, on this one at least, a little boot button. I'm going to turn this whole thing upside down. Didn't want that to happen. Thing came off. You'll notice what we have on this particular receiver is this little button, which is a boot button that puts it into bootloader mode. We have to hold that in whilst connecting power, which means we have to then plug this in at the same time as that's going on. So let's try this. And if you've done it right, you will see that I've got a solid blue light. That is what we're after. So over in the configurator, we should just be able to select UART. So let's just try and flash it and see what happens. So it's saying it's found the right serial port, but we don't seem to be getting much happening. Actually, I'm just looking at my pins here and I'm thinking, oh, I've connected TX to TX and RX to RX, which is probably wrong, isn't it? Duh. Let's just correct that. Right, now we've got our things wired correctly, and hopefully these are going to stay in place this time. So I'm going to hold in the boot button again, slide the USB in. We've got our solid light in bootloader mode, and let's go ahead and attempt to say flash again. Nothing's changed yet, we've got our normal stuff there. So off we go. Hopefully, yep, it's responding this time, and we're getting our writing going on. Well, that's good news. Yeah, we like it. So if we then go ahead and unplug this and plug this back again, you see we get our normal flashing. So that's ready for a connection. However, what happens if we were to break it? And let's say we were doing well, let's do it. Let's do a Wi-Fi flash. If we go ahead and let that go into Wi-Fi mode, right, so we've got our receiver in Wi-Fi mode and we've connected that. We can see, if we look at the window there, it says we're on 330, which is all good. So let's pretend, for example, we didn't want to be on 330 anymore. We wanted to go to 321. Why not? So if we come down and say we're gonna flash this and then hit flash, hopefully it's gonna do it because it's been sort of falling out a bit. Yeah, it looks like now the Wi-Fi is, oh, there it goes, and then I just unplugged that. So what I've basically done is simulated either a power fail or the Wi-Fi going down just to see what will happen to the receiver. And this thing should eventually time out now if we give it a few minutes. Well, if you look at the screen there, you see we've got a failed, but having just rebooted it, it went into regular flashing and now it's gone back into Wi-Fi mode, which is kind of annoying. I kind of expected it to fail. I'm guessing what might happen in this sort of thing is when it updates, it potentially copies across to an area and then sort of transfers it over. And so in this sort of case, it's fine because the update hasn't really done yet. So another way of really screwing up, although this is much harder to do these days, if we were to go ahead and flash the wrong firmware to it, for an example. So if like we just randomly chose one like this and said, yeah, we're going to flash that, this should break it, but it should give you so many warnings beforehand that you practically shouldn't be able to do it if you're using any sort of common sense whatsoever. But hey, let's do it anyway, what the hell. So we've just connected back again via Wi-Fi and you see it's still there, 330. So let's force the flash because we'll have to do that. And let's see what happens. This should break it. So we're updating the firmware. Got the 100% over. Okay, so the update's complete. We're waiting for it to resume blinking before disconnecting power. Why is it blinking? You shouldn't be blinking at this point. You should be broken. This is confusing. Is the hardware so similar that it's actually managing to run the firmware, albeit incorrectly? This is really weird. Okay, if this comes up into Wi-Fi mode, I'm going to find something else to flash it with. Let's have a JEP RC 2.4 and that one. These are so hard to break, it would seem. Anyway, that is flashing normally. Let's just see if it goes into Wi-Fi. I've only ever managed to incorrectly flash one receiver before, and that's when it didn't quite have the proper firmware released, and I managed to choose the wrong one for it at that point. But I recovered that myself with my own FTDI adapter, but this one should at least make it easier, but breaking them is so hard, it would seem. This doesn't seem to be going into Wi-Fi mode though, which is interesting. So maybe we do have something here. Let's reboot it and see what happens. Some good news. We seem to have broken it in some way because it now will not go into Wi-Fi mode. So we can't update it to the right software in Wi-Fi. So that means we can at least try and reflash this via the bootloader. So what I was expecting is this to have a solid blue light and not respond at all. This is basically saying I've got no connection, but it's not going into Wi-Fi. So clearly it's not working properly, but it's not failing in the way I thought it was. So we do the same thing. We hold down the boot button and we power it on. You get a nice solid blue light there. Then we go back in our configurator and we use the UART method, and let's move it back to 330 since we're, or 332 since we're in that zone. And it should, oh, this time we won't do a force flash because we don't need to. Let's see if we can flash this back again. and we're doing a write perfectly well. I should say as well that even if you've got this installed in a flight controller and you do manage to flash the wrong thing over and it wasn't responding, you can keep it in your model in the flight controller, and there's a method, again holding in the button, to put this in bootloader and flash it via pass-through using Betaflight, so it's still doable. So what we'll do with this is just make sure it goes back into Wi-Fi mode to make sure everything's working fine and it's got the right version on it, and that will tell us that it's definitely done the flash correctly this time. I am slightly confused, I have to admit, that I interrupted the flash, it was fine, I flashed the wrong firmware to it, and it was, I mean, it wasn't fine because it wasn't coming up into Wi-Fi, but the fact is it was just waiting there saying, yeah, I'm waiting for a bind, which is kind of curious. Okay, we've got our rapid pulse there, so let's see if we can join the network. And here we are. Oh, it's gone again. Seems a little bit hit and miss, this Wi-Fi connection. It's gone back into sort of saying, oh yeah, I've kind of lost the connection again. The Wi-Fi power from them isn't very strong. The closest you can put it to your computer, the better. But this will rejoin again in a second. Okay. PCBWay 900 MHz RX. Firmware revision 332. So all good. That worked perfectly fine. And that's how you recover it. Although normally I'd expect you just to do a normal power on and you get a solid blue, and then you do the same flash from there. But whether it's broken or not broken, UART flashing is the same thing. Hold down the bootloader button, power it up, and go from there. Okay, here's the new all singing, all dancing RP4 True Diversity receiver. You'll notice I've got it connected to those. More about that in a second. Firstly, I've got it into Wi-Fi mode, and you can see here on the screen that it's running firmware revision 332. I've actually tried using this setup to do the flashing already, and it had an interesting thing which I haven't seen on other ones before. You'll notice if we just plug it in normally, we get quite a colourful display as it's waiting for some sort of sync there. But if we do the it went. It's okay. I can still do it like this even with those two gone. If we plug it in holding the button down like so, you get nothing at all. I mean, it's lost the power now, but absolutely you get nothing at all. I was just going to say, actually, I got slightly better on these. I might need to do it again. What I decided to do was just get a little tweezer and just curl the little end round to make more of a hook as it went in. And doing that helped it grab onto that. But I did want to take these off anyway, because I thought it'd be interesting to try and see if we could actually use the pogo pins to see if this was possible to do single-handed, because obviously I need to hold this on, press the button, plug that in, and keep that there whilst I actually do the flash. Will it work? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. And because that light is not there, if we just slightly move it and the power goes off, we might not know. It's a bit of a weird one, but I thought let's try it out. Okay, you see I've connected the tool now, and my first question is, can I just hold this in place and plug this in? What I think I need to do is have this held down by like a piece of adhesive or something. I think that will help me. Okay, friendly piece of blue tack. Should we get the right way? That way, hopefully I'll be able to hold it with a single hand. The other question is, with this one, can I simply plug this in first and do that? Okay, we see we get the light going on okay there, but I'm then holding it with the wrong hand. So if I need to hold it with my left hand, maybe I just need to move this around a bit. The reason I have to be so careful about this is, of course, I need to hold down the button, and always double checking that we're doing it around the right way. I mean, it seems like we've got our signal there, so that's good. So now let's try holding down the boot button, which I've now lost. Because I've got it up the wrong way. Things you have to check. make sure you have it up the right way. And now don't forget we have to reverse these over. So we're going to hold down the button. So that's maybe in place. So I'm going to hold that there very carefully, go up to here and say flash and see if we are actually connected. Yeah, we are. It's flashing. Very carefully holding that in place. It's going, it's going, it's going. Oh, an error has occurred. I think essentially what's probably happened is we've slightly moved it and we got a problem whilst doing it, which I thought might be an issue. I think what I'm going to do is try and hold it in my right hand, because my right hand is a bit stronger, so I might have a bit more chance of staying still. Right, let's try it again. Make sure that's held down. Holding down the button. Nope, didn't like that. Holding down the button again. So trying to use the mouse on my left hand. So yeah, it's doing it again. Try and keep it still as I can. This is what I mean about needing like multiple pairs of hands, or possibly multiple people. So I'm watching it very carefully. So hardly seeing. So hopefully now hashtag verified, hardly certified RTS pin. It says it's succeeded. So if I take that away and then carefully put that back on, we got something. So that is how you flash or recover with these tools. They're not very easy to hold in place. Multiple people are perhaps the best way to do it, but yeah, that's cool. So there you go, that's the UART Flasher. I must admit I got a bit frustrated with these little things because they kept pinging off and there was much swearing which I had to cut out. But yeah, as soon as I just got my pair of tweezers and I sort of just like made them a little bit more into hooks, they gripped on a bit easier. Although as you saw there, when I moved the thing they went ping 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 again. Just do it again and you'll have a little bit more success. But I was happy I could get a decent connection on these flat pads and of course the circular pads. Will I use this sort of thing? Well, I have to say I've only ever had to recover a bad flash once. I've done it almost 90% of my time via Wi-Fi, except where I don't have it, and then I use bead-flight pass-through. And that's been fine for me. And as you saw, it was really hard to break a receiver, even when I was unplugging it and flashing the wrong software. There was a certain amount of stuff you could get back. But I think these may be useful for getting your receiver and getting it all flashed and together ready to go in a model, because it's very easy to do it before anything's wired up, because it's kind of hard to connect to things as soon as it's got wires soldered into it anyway. So a nice little tool, and it is easier than having to use an FTDI and solder in bits and pieces. And as much frustration as these things caused, when they do work, when I get the little things into claws, they are really very impressive and save you having to resolder things. So that's cool. As for this little guy, I'm going to talk more about this in the future when I actually put it onto something to try it. Obviously it's a true diversity receiver. You've got two lots of chips there. Each of these has 100 milliwatts of power for telemetry, so you'll be able to fly a long way and get your telemetry back. And of course, because you can put these antennas up in different ways, you've got so much more chances of getting your packet. As well as the normal modes, you can use Deja Vu Diversity, you could use Gemini and send two lots of different frequency signals and have them pick it up. It's a much better chance of getting your signal through for a true diversity antenna, especially if you do something on the other end that's going to multiply the amount of packets you're sending to it. Even if you're just doing your basic single packet being sent out, you've got 2 chances to receive that single packet. But yeah, you can open it up and send many more over. Anyway, I'll be looking at this more when it's not freezing cold outside and I'm actually flying something, and then I'll take it out and put it on something and fly it around. Anyway, hope that video was helpful. You can obviously get the UART Flasher and the True Diversity Receiver over at RadioMaster's website, and there'll be links down below. I will catch you next video. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.